What if everything you've been told about Israel being the promised land was incomplete? What if there's more to the story, hidden in the very scriptures that birthed this belief? This question opens a Pandora's box of religious, historical, and political implications. It's widely perceived that Israel is the promised land for the Jewish people, a belief steeped in millennia of faith, tradition, and scripture. This understanding has shaped the world in profound ways, from global politics to the very lives of those in the region. It's a belief that's at the heart of the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict, a situation brimming with complexities, heartbreak, and hope. But what if this narrative isn't as straightforward as it seems? What if the scriptures tell a story that's been overlooked, a story that could change everything we thought we knew? Let's dive deep into the roots of this belief to uncover a perspective that is often overlooked. The promise, as described in religious texts, came with a crucial caveat. It wasn't a carte blanche, but a conditional contract. This may come as a surprise to some, but the promise of the Holy Land was not a simple handover, a divine real estate deal with no strings attached. Let's delve deeper into the scriptures. In the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran, the promise of the land was always tied to a spiritual and moral commitment. For example, Deuteronomy 28 in the Bible outlines a stark choice: blessings for obedience, curses for disobedience. The land was not just a gift, but a responsibility, a sacred trust. This was not a promise made solely on the basis of lineage or ethnicity. It was a promise that demanded adherence to the teachings of the Almighty. The land was not an end in itself, but a means to a greater end: the establishment of a just and righteous society. In the Quran, the Almighty's promise was not to a particular race or tribe, but to all who believed and did good deeds. The land was not a birthright, but a spiritual challenge, a test of faith and character. In the Torah, the promise of the land was contingent on the observance of the commandments. The land was not just a homeland, but a spiritual battlefield, a place where the people were to strive for holiness and righteousness. The promise was not just about land. It was about a way of life, a spiritual commitment. It was about creating a society that reflected the values and teachings of the Almighty. It was about being a light unto the nations, a beacon of justice and righteousness in a world often shrouded in darkness and despair. This is the misunderstood promise, the conditional covenant behind the promised land. It was not an unconditional guarantee, but a call to a higher purpose, a divine challenge. And this, dear listeners, is the truth concealed beneath the surface of well-known historical narratives. Over time, the spiritual essence of this promise has been overshadowed by a misinterpretation that engenders a sense of divine entitlement. The ancient scriptures and the Torah's sacred text give us a clearer understanding of this. In the Talmud, however, this revelation in the Torah has been overlooked or ignored. It's a critical fact that is often not given its due. The promise, it turns out, was never designed to be an unquestioned entitlement, a carte blanche to the land without weighing one's actions or adherence to the Almighty's teachings. This interpretation, while seemingly empowering, gravely misses the point. It overlooks the commitment to justice, righteousness, and peace that the Almighty demanded in return for His promise. This overlooked revelation in the Torah, while seemingly innocuous, has had far-reaching implications. It has fueled a narrative that justifies occupation, oppression, and violence in the name of a divine right, while conveniently ignoring the spiritual teachings of justice, peace, and love that the Almighty espoused. The promise was not just about the land. It was about upholding the values of justice, righteousness, and peace. It was a call to live in harmony with each other and with the land. The essence of the promise, as clearly stated in the Torah, has been lost in translation in the Talmud, leading to a skewed narrative, one that negates the spiritual responsibilities that came along with the Almighty's promise. This neglect has not only altered the narrative, but it has also had tangible impacts on the lives of millions. It's high time we relook at this overlooked revelation and understand the spiritual essence of the promise as stated in the Torah, giving it the importance it rightfully deserves. The repercussions of this misunderstanding are far-reaching and have directly contributed to the ongoing situation in Palestine. Misinterpretation of the promise, as we have discussed, has led to a sense of entitlement that disregards the spiritual responsibility attached to it. This sense of entitlement has, in turn, fueled the narrative of a divine right to the land, which has been used as a justification for the occupation, violence, and displacement of Palestinians. Religious narratives, when misinterpreted or selectively applied, can be powerful tools. They can lend a sense of legitimacy to actions that, at their core, contradict the very teachings they claim to uphold. In the case of the Promised Land, this religious justification has been used to legitimize actions that go against the Almighty's teachings of peace, justice, and righteousness. The land, promised conditionally to the people who adhered to his teachings, was never meant to be a prize for the taking. It was a spiritual covenant, a promise of a place where the values of the Almighty could thrive. Yet, the selective interpretation of this promise has led to a situation where these values are being compromised. The displacement of Palestinians, the violence, and the occupation, these are not the fruits of a divine promise. They are the consequences of a misinterpreted promise, a misunderstanding that has led to a human rights crisis, a crisis that continues to escalate, fueled by a narrative that overlooks the conditionality of the Almighty's promise. This isn't just about land, it's about how religious beliefs and their real-world implications are understood and acted upon. It's about the consequences of misunderstanding a conditional promise as an unconditional right. It's about the misuse of a spiritual covenant to justify actions that contradict the Almighty's teachings. The misuse of a spiritual covenant has led to a human rights crisis. It's a crisis that calls for a re-evaluation of the narratives we hold, the beliefs we act upon, and the world we want to create. Because when a misunderstanding leads to such dire consequences, it's time to question and challenge the interpretation. It's time to seek a more compassionate and just understanding that aligns with the Almighty's teachings. The theological debate is not just a matter of past histories. It's a pressing issue that resonates with the current events in Palestine. The historical threads we've been unraveling are woven into the fabric of today's world. The conditional promise, its misinterpretation, and the ensuing consequences are not relics of an ancient past. They're alive, pulsating with the heartbeat of contemporary Palestine. The selective interpretation of religious texts, the same that has overlooked the conditional nature of the promise, is at the forefront of the present-day oppression and suffering. It's a mirror reflecting the narratives that have shaped our understanding of the Israel-Palestine conflict. Today, we see the land being claimed under the banner of a divine right, a banner woven from the threads of selective interpretation. But this right is being exercised at a heavy cost. It's a cost paid in tears, in lost homes, in shattered dreams, and in lives cut short. This brings us to a global stage where debates are raging, where the moral and ethical implications of the occupation are scrutinized. It's a stage where scholars, politicians, and ordinary people are grappling with questions of justice, human rights, and the sanctity of religious teachings. These debates are not just about who owns the land, they're about the very essence of our shared humanity. They're about how we interpret our religious beliefs and how those interpretations guide our actions. They're about whether we're upholding the core principles of justice, righteousness, and peace as demanded by the Almighty. So, as we navigate the turbulent waters of these debates, let's remember to question, to reflect, and to challenge the narratives that have been handed to us. The question remains, are we interpreting the promise in a way that aligns with the Almighty's teachings, or are we selectively reading the scriptures to justify our actions? We must strive to understand the promise not as an entitlement, but as a call to uphold the values, the teachings, and the responsibilities that the Almighty has bestowed upon us. In wrapping up, we've explored the promised land of Israel and its implications. Misconceptions and their global impacts underscore the need for thinking, particularly with religious beliefs. Let's aim for a fair understanding mindful of spiritual responsibilities, must question accepted narratives and status quo. If you enjoy challenging historical norms, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.